Well, just wondering too, I mean, what happens, you've talked about rail, I mean, before now, I think you visited the Apapa port, trying to look at the rail system there. What is happening in that direction? Are you liaising with the Minister of Transport? And is the focus just on works? When we talk about works, is it just the roads?
Well, we work as a team. The Honorable Minister for Transportation is working to get the port rail facility going. I think there's a proposal by General Electric Group who have experience in doing this kind of thing. You will also have heard him speak about the Lagos Kano rail, which was a contentious issue, I believe, in the last budget. The whole idea is to relieve the roads of the very, very heavy axle load pressure that they are subjected to. And I will be one of the happiest people if that happened, because it would mean then that our roads would last longer and they would achieve and live for their desired life, and they will be subject to less abuse. We are the only country in West Africa, for example, that is not yet fully compliant with the axle load treaty obligations we signed. Those are policies that we intend to implement this year, restore some of the way bridges that we have completed back to full use. We are trying to see how we can concession the management of those way bridges, because way bridges don't stand alone. Some of the rights you have is also that when there's a vehicle in violation, you have to discharge the cargo and you have to store them. So we need people who want to build warehouses and all of that. We don't think that that's business that we should really be involved in. If we build the way bridges, we're looking for concessionaires now to come and build and manage. But we need to comply with the treaty obligation. We have petrol tankers carrying 60,000 liters when they should be carrying only 33,000, and so on and so forth. We need to return back to normalcy.
Your Excellency, your ministry, I mean, you're heading 3 broad ministries, and if you look at our timelines, there are a lot of people asking questions that they want you to answer, all of them. But saying that you talked about the time we don't have and the resources not being available, yet there's so much to be done. There was a time you mentioned something about concessioning. I'm taking you back to the roads now. Are we still looking in that angle to do something like a concessioning? I mean, Lagos-Lekki, in Lagos, the Lekki road is an example of a concessioning that worked. Are we looking at something like that for places like the southeast, like the Middle Belt, Abuja, Kogi, Zigodije Road? They say it's a death trap. The southeast, those going down, went through a horrendous experience. But even going from the southeast on through to Calabar, Akwa Ibom, are we looking at concessioning to be able to meet up on all of this?
We are looking at concessions. We are eager to have concessions. But I think that as a people, we need to understand how concessions work. We need to understand the time it takes. And we need to understand the risks that we have created. And let me again say that in my very modest experience, the organizations that are involved in concessions, I don't think they're in the region of about 200 globally. The people who play, real big players in infrastructure concession, and they all seem to know themselves. The bankers know them. They know most of their high risk, low risk, medium risk terrain. I think one of the disservice we have done to ourselves is the speed at which we rush to courts in the name of all sorts of rights to injunct projects that have started. They are not an incentive to investors. The risk at which we cancel contracts, one administration after the other, they are not incentives to investors, especially in infrastructure that they can't move away. And these are my experiences in negotiating the Lekki concession. People forget, the Lekki concession agreement was signed in 2005. We didn't reach financial close until 2010. When I became governor, we started funding that project from taxpayers' funding. And when the investors ultimately came and lenders came, they said, well, we had to become a subordinated lender. We were the last to be paid when they have fully recovered. So these things take time. And the existing body of legislation hasn't helped. That's why I've appeared before the Senate Committee on Works, Senate Committee, to lend my contribution to some of the amendments that we need to make in terms of legislation. If you wanted to concession a road, you would have to read the Federal Highways Act, you have to read the FEMA Act, you have to read some other legislation, you have to be familiar with BPE, you have to be familiar with National Council on Privatization, you have to work with so many things. That's not, it's possible, but it just makes it difficult. And that's why I was making the case for one single legislation that harmonizes all of these rules.
You know, as we talk about legislation and privatization, perhaps let's start asking some of those questions many Nigerians have been asking. Is there any likelihood for a revisiting of the privatization, power privatization program?
Well, you see, it's interesting you ask this question. I've asked the question, what does revisiting mean? Because it's a very amorphous word. As we speak, we are revisiting because we are looking at what the discos are doing, we're looking at what the gencos are doing. What does revisiting mean? And I have said, and I will repeat, that if revisiting means cancelling the concession, I will not recommend it. Of course, the ultimate decision doesn't lie with me.
Why is that?
The reason I will not recommend it is part of my answer to Neota's question. Once you cancel a contract, you are sending a negative investment signal that you don't respect contracts. Now, and the analogy I've used is this. If Nigerians bought those assets, if you beat your children every day in your own house, you won't ask me to send my children to come to the house to come and play. And that's the perspective of investment behavior. Now, was that privatization perfect? Perhaps not. If I had done it myself, would it have been perfect? Perhaps not. We're all flawed. So, what are the problems? Let's do a root and branch analysis. We have done that. We have finished the work. That's why you might have heard in the report that we had a meeting with the World Bank. There are things that will change. Governance of the discos when NERC is fully reconstituted, because that's their responsibility. Transparency, audits, accounts, and audit also of the consumption market. The records I met indicate that only 6 million people are subscribers to electricity. That doesn't make sense to me. If it is true, I need to verify it. But I think there are more Nigerians who are connected to electricity than 6 million consumers.
Maybe 6 million people who are paying their bills.
No. 6 million people, that's a bulk. And about 3 point something have been metered. Then, at the time, whatever time that data was put together, have we gone back to do a data, an audit of their new energy demand? Between that time and now, how many of them have bought tablets like you have? How many of them have bought phones? How many of them have brought extra phones? And so on and so forth. You know, because if you don't know what your customers need, you really can't deliver it.
But again, you know, as you highlighted in explaining the road construction, if it starts from point A, the man in point B, without saying it, because these are all based on empirical evidence and facts, he would think that nothing is being done. It's almost the same thing with power. So if I don't switch on, you know, my switch and get to see a flicker of light in my home, I wouldn't know what your ministry is doing at the moment. So perhaps you can take us.
That's why I'm
here. That's why we're excited that you're here. You take us through, and so that we see what you're building so far, what key infrastructure you've put in place, so that we know that 2017 we're likely to see this form of good coming from the power sector.
Okay, one of the things I can tell you in terms of power is that we have at the moment about 11 major transmission projects going on to expand the grid. At this moment, the last simulation of the grid from the completed projects in the last 1 year is that the grid now has a carrying capacity of 7,200 megawatt. That's what it can carry now. So all of the stories you heard is only 5,000 clearly is now dispelled as unverifiable assertions. As I said before, the grid is dynamic. It has to continue to evolve and grow. In terms of energy production, in the next few days, we will finish the second phase of the Usman Dam solar power. It was about 800 watts before. It's supposed to be 1.2 megawatt. The second phase will finish, will be commissioned in a number of days. We have finished the Gurara power station now. So the substation in Kaduna that should take the power is also now completed. They're doing pre-commissioning testing. The Katsina windmill that we resuscitated, the equipment to finish it just left Europe, I think on the 2nd or 3rd of January. So that should finish again in the this first quarter. The 215 megawatt power plant in Kaduna should finish this year. And we should also see the completion and utilization of the Dadinkowa power plant in Gombe. We are also pursuing a fast-track gas project in Afam in the South-South. That has been the subject of some very unsalutary and unfactual allegations about my ministry and some other public officers.
I'm afraid
those are the things that are coming up, and I've spoken about the university project.
Sorry about
in terms
that.
Of rural
we'll come back because we have to go on the break now. We'll come back. We'll continue from that, and a couple of other issues we'll be looking at when we return from Malpo. Don't forget, there's also the issue of the bridges and road construction and even housing. Many Nigerians will want to see roofs over their heads and know what exactly your ministry is doing on that. That's when we'll return. Stay with us.